Perinthalmanna, a developing town which lies on the national highway connecting Coimbatore and Kozhikode, has 24 hours accessibility through both road and rail. This helps the people from even the remotest places reach here comfortably. Started on 10th August 1990 with just 150 bed capacity. Now, the Maulana Hospital has grown to become a super specialty hospital with 400 beds.
Maulana Charitable Trust is a charitable society commenced servicing humanity for 30 years. Apart from Maulana Hospital, which is NABH accredited super specialty hospital, we have many institutions running under this trust. Maulana College of Pharmacy, Maulana College of Nursing, Maulana College of Paramedical Sciences, and we have Maulana International School also running in our campus. The campus is situated amidst the serene landscape near Angadipuram railway station in Palakkad Calicut highway in heart of the city of Perinthalmanna.
Maulana College of Pharmacy was founded under the aegis of Maulana Charitable Trust, giving a strong foundation of knowledge essential to pharmacy profession that is completing the first decade in coming year. The college offers Bachelor of Pharmacy course approved by AICTE New Delhi, Government of Kerala and affiliated to Kerala University of Health Sciences, Thrissur. College is provided with a solid infrastructure with well-furnished smart classrooms and fully equipped laboratories in the departments of pharmaceutical chemistry, pharmaceutics, pharmacology and pharmacognosy, and has a voluminous library comprising books of eminent foreign authors as well as famous Indian. We have also broadband facility, reading room and reprographics. The college has eminent experienced faculty members providing classes with modern teaching aids, denoting the fast-lightened vision of creating value through knowledge, which makes the students to be competitive and efficient in their professional career. The institution serves as a strong framework for the graduate to become world-class pharmacists. Maulana College of Nursing, conducting 4-year BSc Nursing program, is attached to Maulana Hospital, a NABH accredited super specialty referral hospital with modern facilities and services. The college strives to implement the best standards in education, utilizing the latest technologies available to improve student learning and granting comprehensive healthcare.
Paramedical sciences have adequate instructional, institutional and clinical facilities for running BSc MLT degree course in paramedical science education approved by Kerala University of Health Sciences. The college also provides DRT and DOT-AT diploma courses approved by Director of Medical Education.
On behalf of management, staff, students and parents of whole Maulana institutions, I do wholeheartedly welcome each and every one of you to this amazing academic debate and career discussion, where you can see and realize upcoming tendencies and novel ideas and concepts regarding medical career education, especially in these unprecedented and unpredictable situations of COVID-19 pandemic. Here it is my immense pleasure to host these three eminent academicians and popular personalities as guests and resource person to grace us and to enrich the event by their discussion and deliberations. In this very special contest, Maulana institutions are organizing this Online Career Summit 2020 to discuss about the prospects of medical education in COVID era, aspiration and anxieties. Also, I would like to acknowledge with courteous gratitude all our participants, including academicians like vice chancellors, deans, principals, professors, teachers, from their generosity to be with us today. I am also extremely blessed with the presence of young scientists, medical professionals, entrepreneurs, managers from different parts of the world like UAE, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Qatar, Kuwait, Ethiopia, UK, Canada, US, and etc. All are here. Yes, everything is set. Our respected resource persons are ready to talk today despite their busy schedule and official commitment. Professor Dr. Mohanan Kundumel, the Honorable Vice Chancellor of Kerala University of Health Sciences, and Dr. Prof. B. A. Pasal Ghafoor sir, COVID Expert Committee member, Director, MES Academy of Medical Science, and President of MES All India Committee. And Dr. G.S. Harikumaran Nair, the Special Officer for New Medical College, Directorate of Medical Education, Government of Kerala. All the panelists are here on time. Once again, I welcome our guests to the Maulana Career Summit 2020. Here also my Managing Director, Dr. Abdul Rashid sir with us, and the Administrator Sayyid Mohammed sir, and my principals and my faculties, and all the students. I am welcoming all of you in this online career summit. Let's start with the first question with our Honorable Vice Chancellor, that as all of us know, the whole world is going thoroughly through unprecedented situation due to the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic. The spreading of the virus has affected survival and existence of the mankind in aspect of economy, trade, travel, education, etc. Here, in front of this pandemic, we cannot see the difference among the developed countries and undeveloped countries, nor between the rich or poor countries. If you are talking about education sector in specific, I would say the whole scenario got changed both locally and international level. Educational experts and policy makers are talking about the paradigm shift which unexpectedly happened in the field of higher education, including medical education. As an eminent academician, vibrant administrator, and quality institution builder, how do you take this issue? What would be the future of medical education in India, especially in Kerala? The Honorable Vice Chancellor, please, you can take your mic.
Very good morning to you all. Thank you, Dr. Naseef and Maulana group of institutions for inviting me to be a part of this webinar program. I'm so happy that my colleagues in the discussion are Dr. Pasal Ghafoor and Dr. Harikumaran Nair. So we can have a very fruitful discussion, I hope. As rightly pointed up by Naseef, is that we are facing a very unprecedented situation. And therefore, we will have unprecedented solutions also. That is the main point. In fact, when the COVID struck at China, nobody knew what to do. And of course, China also did not do. So they locked down entire thing. And how they locked down, we don't know, because things from China will not come out. But somehow they an totalitarian regime in China could do, and then they contained the disease. So the lesson was that if you lock down, the disease can be contained. And the first case of COVID in India came to Kerala. In fact, it came to Thrissur, where the university is situated. And on January 30th, and I was also there when the case came and we had discussion. And maybe as a knee-jerk reaction or a calculated decision, we also locked down the country. But then, in that lockdown, we learned a lot of lessons. First of all, we knew what kind of disease is there and how you can prevent it. And the most important thing is social distancing, or rather physical distancing. The social distancing word is not correct because socially you have to be close. So basically it is a physical distancing. That is the important thing. And then the disease can spread from one person to other. That's all. Then a person if touches some place and another person touches same place, disease can spread. So you know that. So that has been learned. And another thing is that some people, maybe 3%, 5%, or even 10% can become very sick. So when they become very sick, you must be prepared. This preparation was done all over India, especially in Kerala. We did a wonderful work. Now we are looking back. Initially, we all thought we will lock down for 1 month, 2 months, maybe even 3 months. By that time, disease will disappear. But we realized that this disease is not going to disappear. It will not. So it has to be kicked out. How will you kick the disease out? One, you have a vaccine. In fact, there are more severe diseases around us. Measles is more severe. But then, measles is not affecting us because we have a vaccine. Similarly, can you detect a vaccine? But then now we realize that even though uh, many companies, the Oxford University, everybody says that it is going to come within few weeks, within few months. We realize that it may take 1 or 2 years. Then will somebody discover a drug? Of course, we have similar diseases and we have got drugs, but here we have not detected. Many drugs have been tried. Of course, people thought hydroxychloroquine is a good drug. Now controversy has come. It is good, it is bad, it is worse. So all these controversies are come. Now today we are approving dexamethasone. So that could help in many number of cases, but these are not the real cure. This will support. So now the situation is we are going to live with COVID. Live with COVID till a vaccine comes, till a drug comes. So entire medical education, everything, not only medical education, banking, industry, everything, we are going to live with COVID. So that is the strategy. And how will you live with COVID? You live with COVID without getting COVID. So how will you get COVID? When you have the physical distance is not kept. So everything can be done if you can prevent the physical closeness. So no more shake hand, no more hugging, and no more sitting very close in a theory classroom. That is the bottom line. So what will you do? You do online classes. We are all doing wonderfully well. We are doing it. University has got some 340 institutions, and including Maulana Institute, and all of you are doing amazingly well online classes. But then, what about practicals? It cannot be done online. What about clinical examinations? It can never be done. You have to touch a patient, you have to auscultate a patient, you have to feel a patient. It cannot be done. You can demonstrate that. So that cannot be done. In fact, you can teach history, you can teach Malayalam, you can teach English online to an extent, but you cannot teach clinical medicine, you cannot teach laboratory technology, you cannot teach pharmacy, you can never teach nursing practice. All these things cannot be taught. And then, so we are doing what can be done. Examinations can be conducted online. In fact, university is creating a new platform, Moodle, which is a free platform on which you can conduct online classes, you can upload videos, you can send theory notes, and you can conduct online MCQ classes also. And we can do it in such a way that it is not done with copying. We can give different questions to different students. All these things can be done. But these are all temporary arrangements. Permanent arrangement in medical education, the COVID will have to disappear, or we have to discover a vaccine. So that is the situation. It is not an Indian situation. It is not a Kerala situation. Internationally, many articles are coming up in BMJ, Lancet. They are all saying same thing. They are all saying same thing, that medical education cannot be continued online, and therefore we will have to think about now. We may be able to open our institutions, but the hostels has to be vacated, cleaned, vacated, because now we are given it to COVID patients. In fact, government wanted COVID rooms, and all our healthcare institutions gave, but now we have to get it back. Then we have to conduct examinations. All these things will have to be done. In fact, university is taking steps. In fact, Monday, this coming Monday, 29th, university is going to start with the examination from KUHS. That is postgraduate examination. It's very simple, because these postgraduate students have completed their course, and once they pass and come out, they are going to be professionals. Thousands such professionals are ready to serve the country. So that is the business of university, to conduct an examination, and they will come out with all precautions we are going to conduct. If that becomes successful, we will start conducting one by one final year examination. Final year MBBS final year, Ayurveda final year, nurse final year, final year, final year. That way, we will create a lot of professionals. Then we will think about examinations in between, and then we will think about classes. This is what we are planning, and that is what possible. That's what I would like to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for the wonderful opening of the Maulana Online Career Summit. It's a great information, relaxing information from the Kerala University of Health Sciences that they are going to start the exams as one by one. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Next, I move to the Dr. Fasal Ghafoor, the Director of MES and the COVID Expert Committee member, Dr. Fasal Ghafoor with us. The question to the Dr. Fasal Ghafoor is, there is mixed opinion and comments regarding the future of medical and paramedical education. In one hand, we can see enormous opportunities and are open in different universities around the globe in medical and biological science. Also, governments and health authorities are keep hiring medical professionals in large number. In other hand, despite people are wholeheartedly saluting and appreciating healthcare professionals, including COVID-19 variants, it is undoubtedly visible that there are scareness and concerns among parents from sending their wards for opting medical education as career option. As a person who simultaneously having serious intervention in both medical field and public mass, I do request you to make this dilemma clear. Also, I ask you, how do you foresee the scope of medical and paramedical education in COVID-19 or post-COVID-19 era? Sir, please.
So first, I will pass a comment regarding the availability of medical staff. See, there is going to be a dearth of medical staff all over the world, and it is also going to be there in India. The reason is that except for probably some of the southern states, most of the states in India lack medical infrastructure, doctors, equipment, etc. Now they are realizing the folly of not having that. So what happens is that, a lot of us have a lot of opportunities in many of the states in India itself, and we should be able to mobilize ourselves for that. Because why I'm telling you is that now I am seeing a lot of girls over here. Now, if I ask these girls to go to Murshidabad or Malda in West Bengal, I'm sure that they will not go. This is the problem now. 75% of the health professionals now studying in MBBS, BDS, etc. are girls. So how ready will be they to go and serve in states, outside states? Next question. For example, the entire African continent requires professionals. They are opening up clinics everywhere. There also we have the same problem. Now, why do we have an opportunity? I'll tell you. You know that the dollar has now crashed. So that means they cannot afford anybody from Europe. So they have to hire people from Asia. And ours is one of the most standardized degrees. The Chinese degree or the Japanese degree is not standardized with the Western world. So as you know, most of the countries are colonies of Britain, including America, and so they will only go for an American or British style of education. That is where we score. Our textbooks, our teaching, everything is being accepted there. So we have to prepare ourselves, that we have to go outside. Before they see, we have only one aim. Either we have the aim to practice in Maulana Hospital or you want to go to Gulf. So from this mindset should be changed. Now, regarding the cost of education, I don't think the cost of education now is very high, because after the uniform fees has come in, the cost of education is not very high. It is affordable. And this is not going to be an issue. The cost is not going to be increased by the government. So that point, I'm very sure that at least for two to 3 years, the government is not going to increase the cost. Now the problem is there regarding clinical training. That is what Dr. Mohan was telling about clinical training. Without clinical training, how do you become doctors? Now, again, I'll tell you, in our medical college over there, MES, clinical training is going on. DM training is going on. MD training is going on. There are patients over there. But what we have done is that we have reduced the number of patients to 50%. And you have seen that only the genuine patients are admitted. We don't want the 20-year-old headache, 15-year-old backache. We don't want these sort of aches. If the patient has got signs, hemiplegia, patient is admitted, patient has got a myocardial infarction, patient is admitted, patient requires a surgery, whether elective or emergency, it's going on. Nasif is my friend, he can go there and see what is happening. But it is restricted this way. A doctor can only see 6 patients in an hour. So 5 into 6, 30 hours. And the patient cannot say, I'm late, that thing and all. Your time is given at 10:15, you turn up at 10:15. You turn up at 10:50. So I do not find any problem over there. I see around 30 patients. Previously, what I used to do is that I will turn up at 11 o'clock, 11:30 like that, and then see that other doctorമാർക്ക് ഒരു സന്തോഷമാണ്, ഒരു കൂട്ടം ആൾക്കാർ ഇരിക്കുന്നത്, മനസ്സിലല്ലേ? അവരെ കാണുമ്പോൾ ഒരു സന്തോഷം, ഞാൻ നല്ലൊരു ഡോക്ടറാണ്, തെറ്റായ ഒരു ധാരണ, മനസ്സിലല്ലേ? അപ്പൊ അതല്ല, അതിന് പകരമായിട്ട് ഇത് സ്പേസ് ചെയ്തിരിക്കുകയാണ്. Similarly, everything is spaced. Surgeries are spaced. Everything is spaced, and there is first of all, there is a surveillance in the beginning in front of the hospital to see whether you are really sick or not. So all these things are done. There is a COVID cell over there and all, and I am teaching my DMPGs. They are examining the patients. നേരത്തെ പറഞ്ഞ അകലം, face mask, ഇതൊക്കെ കൂടെ വെച്ചിട്ട് I am teaching them. The MD students are being taught now. Only the problem is regarding the MBBS students, because the number is high. Then they have to stay together in the hostel. So same thing will be applicable to pharmacy, dental. I'm only giving MBBS as an example. So this issue has to be sorted out. So what we will have to do is that probably we will have to go for shift system, because any of those people are staying there. So let us say one batch is having clinics, seeing patients between 9 to 11 or 11:30. The next batch will start at 1. The next batch will start for 4 o'clock. So, and of course, they are dispersed to various departments. Some go to surgery, some to gynecology, some to chest. So this means a dispersal and surveillance system should be there, and all of them should be protected and all. And then, of course, even in the clinical examination, we should not be too diligent. That the examiners also, Dr. Mohan, please note, the examiners also should not hereafter say, did you elicit that sign? Did you get that murmur? Did you look for the third heart sound? That is not possible, because you can't go too close to the patient. You can just examining him. For me, as far as I am concerned, only the knee hammer is there, so no problem. So I keep a distance with the patient and examine. But for chest or ENT and all, ENT, they are looking into the throat itself. So they have more of a risk. So they should be given PP kits. Even their PGs can be given, students can be given PP kits. So we should have a rearrangement. The emphasis from clinics first. There should be a small change. Let us have a bit more of theory, which comes online by online teaching. Same thing will apply to theory classes also. We don't want everybody to sit in that lecture hall and get into a COVID atmosphere. Let them go. Let them sit in their rooms, or let them sit at their homes, and let us have online teaching. So this is just preliminarily, I wanted to say that we cannot say that we will not have any clinical teaching.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you for your wonderful information. Next, we are moving to our third panelist, Dr. G.S. Harikumaran Nair. He is the Special Officer under the Directorate of Medical Education for New Medical Colleges, and he was the Research Dean under our university, Kerala University of Health Sciences. And sir, your question is, people are eagerly waiting for a vaccine to get relief from the pandemic, and media is coming day by day with lots of rumors and myths about the virus statistics and scientific studies. Could you please update the current status of scientific researches regarding the virus, including something which will lead into formulation of vaccine? How long the whole humanity has to wait for living on this planet with peaceful mind? Sir, please.
Thank you, Dr. Nasif and the Maulana Institute for inviting me as the panel. I think I can answer the last question first. The last question is how long we have to wait. So we have to wait at least for 1.5 years to have a vaccine to come into play in the society. And till then, we have to live, as Dr. Mohan sir has already described, we have to live with COVID without fear, but with caution, so that our infectivity graph is remaining relatively flat. So as per our R0 or the infectivity rate, if you consider it as 2 or maybe 2.5, then it is natural by calculation that 50 to 60% of our population has to be either infected or vaccinated to have a success of our work against COVID. So if you have an infection only, mind you that if you take the example of Kerala, if you have to depend on infection only, then 50 to 60% means we have to have the infection of 1.5 crores of maybe more than that of people in Kerala to be infected. A very, very, very difficult and unwanted situation. And the other option is you have a few of them infected as now it is going on, and later we have our vaccine to come into play. Instead of infection, we can have a vaccination and then get the immunity. And for that, unfortunately, as per the present status, we have to wait for at least, many claims are there that the vaccine will be available by this December, but we have to be very careful and we have to expect it maybe next June, after 1 year, not in December. I think we are too optimistic to say that it will come in next December. Many of the companies are now claiming that it will come in next December. But as we know that there are a lot of things to be done before a vaccine has to be given to a patient, or it has to be implemented in the community as a program, or it is to be accepted in the society without much, with safety and efficacy. So many tests are pending. Clinical trial phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 are there. Many of our research is at phase 1 and phase 2, and there are reports which says that some of them are just going for the phase 3 trial, and only after the phase 3 trial being successful, we can really take it to the society without fear. Otherwise, the calamities due to not due to viruses, but due to vaccines will come. And generally, if you look at the scenario, I will just play.
So let's suppose you wanted to make a vaccine. How would you do that? I think the first thing is to try and see, what diseases out there are hurting children or adults.
Is it audible? Is it audible?
And once you then find what that disease is and find either the virus or bacteria or fungus or parasite that's causing that disease, then what you have to do is try and figure out, okay, how can I make a vaccine? Now, actually, all vaccines are made the same way, which is you're trying to sort of separate that part of the microorganism that makes you sick from the part of the microorganism that induces an immune response which protects you. That's the way every single vaccine is made. So, for example, when Jonas Salk made his famous polio vaccine, what he did was he took polio virus, he completely killed that virus with a chemical, but he didn't affect the virus so much that when you injected it into people's arms, that it couldn't induce an immune response. It still induced an immune response, but because it couldn't reproduce itself, it couldn't grow, it couldn't cause disease. And that's how he made his vaccine, his so-called inactivated polio vaccine. And that's how you make any vaccine. You're just trying to separate those two things out. Sometimes you just weaken a virus by a number of means so that it sort of reproduces itself a little bit, not so much that it causes disease, but enough that it induces an immune response. For bacteria, sometimes you just take the surface of a bacteria, the so-called complex sugar or polysaccharide. Sometimes you just use a single viral protein or a killed virus. There's a lot of different ways to make a vaccine. So the first thing is to sort of identify the pathogen pathogen or organism, and then figure out where to go from there. But so it goes into several stages. The first is hopefully you can have a small animal model to study the disease. That's not always true, but if you can get it, it makes things a lot faster. But step one, or phase one, is you have something, you think you've made a vaccine. So let's suppose you were interested in making a respiratory syncytial virus vaccine. This is a virus you may not have heard of, but it's a virus that really causes tens of thousands of children to be hospitalized every year. It kills thousands of children, and there's not a vaccine for it. It's called respiratory syncytial virus. So now you think you've made a vaccine. So the first thing that you do is so-called phase one trials, where you inoculate it initially into adults, and then older children, then younger children, then young children, just to make sure it's safe and to get a sense that you can induce an immune response that may hopefully be protective. Then you go to phase two studies, which is the same sort of things. Now it's not only dose, but it's sort of a bigger safety trial to make sure that it's safe and that you've got the dose right. Then if that all looks good, you can go to a so-called a phase 3 trial, which is a much bigger trial. Now you're looking not only to make sure that it's safe, not only to make sure that the dose is right, but also to make sure that this vaccine protects against the disease that you're trying to protect against. And then after you've done that, you submit all that information to the Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, for approval. Technically, licensure, if everything looks great, takes about 10 months. But the process, as a general rule, the time it takes to make a vaccine here in the 21st century is around 25 years.
So we must have noticed that for a vaccine to come, normally it has to take maybe 15 to 25 years. Mm-hmm. But now we are in the fast track, where the animal testing is a little bit made in the fast track, so that we expect it in at least within 1.5 years only. There are reports from Oxford University and UK-based AstraZeneca and US-based Moderna, Pfizer. Many of the companies are now coming with claims that they have reached phase 2, or maybe preparing for a phase 3 trial, so that they can put it into practice it will come out by next December. But I don't expect that it will come by December. I'm a little pessimistic on that aspect, because of the time which has to be allowed to make it available to the society. And Imperial College also has a claim that it has a vaccine which is going to be a success. And all are maybe in the phase 1 and phase 2 and not entering phase 3. And US-based Moderna has a claim that they are going for their larger sample with phase 3 soon. It is only soon. It is not being scheduled. I think their claim is by December we will get the vaccine, but we can expect it by maybe next June only. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the latest wonderful information regarding the vaccine. Now I'm announcing that our participants are more than 500 in the Zoom, and they are watching the Facebook Live also. Those who are not able to enter into the Zoom, they are watching the Facebook Live also. Now we are moving to the second question of our Honorable Vice Chancellor. Sir, as you already shared about the changing strategies in medical education field, I would like to ask you directly on behalf of teachers, students, and in medical and paramedical education, what are the policies and programs being carried out by our university, that is our health university? Is there any possibility of modifying curriculum and syllabus to cope up with the upcoming situation and challenges? As the Vice Chancellor of the Kerala University of Health Science, an expert who has been associated with almost all the statutory bodies and agencies related to the both state and central government, can you comment on the chance of introducing new courses? Sir, please.
Thank you. Again, health university, for that matter, health universities in India, all the health universities conduct courses according to the national council. A medical course by a National Medical Commission or MCA, whatever you call it, or the Ayush Council. And the only area where there is no council is allied health sciences and the paramedical. So that is the situation. So the councils will have to give decision and then it has to be implemented. So you cannot dilute what the council has done. You can add on. So and that's what we are doing. We are adding on certain things, but you cannot delete. Now, I said from Monday onward we are going to conduct medical PG courses. Okay, medical PG courses. One mandatory thing as per the council decision is in the practical examination. The practical examination is conducted by 4 professors, of which 2 should come from outside state, which is not possible now. So the council said you can have examiners from the same state. So that and they said you can do it this year only. So we are going to have examiners from the state, and we have decided the examiner from the nearest college so that they can come in the morning and conduct the examination going the day. So this is what we are going to do, and it will be done. Similarly, pharmacy council has taken a decision. Now you know that pharmacy courses are done in semesters, and every semester they have an examination. Now pharmacy council has said that the semester examination can be done away with, and student can be sent to the next semester, and you can conduct the examination by the end of the year. So pharmacy students need not write this examination, so it has been cancelled. So they will have to write the examination as an annual examination. So then 6 months, so they are given promotion. Okay. Now certain allied courses, optometry, all these things have got this situation. They have got semester courses, but they don't have a council. So we have decided to implement what pharmacy council has said. So they can be promoted without an exam. So they can continue to have a class. Similarly, there is BAMS, the Ayurveda students, they were given registration for the examination, and then examination was postponed. So they were given registration with the available attendance they had. But now examination has gone postponed, and during that period they attended online classes. So we thought we will take care of that attendance. So we allowed them to include that attendance so that they have attendance, and then they can write the examination. So these are all the things which the university can do and the university is doing. Now, as Dr. Faisal Ghafoor has rightly said, postgraduate courses has not been stopped. The university has stopped only undergraduate courses. Postgraduate, because postgraduates are taking part in day-to-day care of the hospital. They are taking care. In fact, most of the medical colleges, especially government medical colleges, the COVID patients, the first line treating doctor is a postgraduate student. So they are continuing and their course is continuing, and therefore they will get the degree also. And this we have said for other streams, but unfortunately, many other stream colleges are not able to conduct postgraduate courses. So because maybe the students are not ready, the institution is not ready, all these problems are there. So what we have said is that if you are ready to conduct, or if you are conducting postgraduate courses or internship for that matter, internship also, many institutions are conducting, many cannot conduct. So if you are conducting it, you give them attendance and we will give them certificate. But we will not give certificate without conducting internship, without conducting postgraduate course, and for them the course will be extended. That is what we have to do, and that is the only thing we can do. Now regarding the syllabus of course is a big thing that can be changed by the national councils, and therefore we are not contemplating any deletion or reduction of the syllabus, but then we can add on. Even without the permission of the National Council, we are adding on epidemiology in a big way. In fact, now this epidemics has come. People does not know, as Dr. Hari has rightly pointed about the R0 and what is the importance of R0, nobody knew. And contact tracing. Kerala has become a great success because of the wonderful act of contact tracing. But only few people knew how to do this contact tracing. So we did not teach them. So we have to include that. So we are going to teach such epidemiological, because we all thought we have defeated epidemic. We have defeated infectious disease. No more cholera, no more polio, no more smallpox. We thought we have got only non-communicable diseases, NCD. So entire fund was spent on non-communicable disease, thinking that there is no more communicable diseases. Now, one single communicable disease has destroyed the entire world. and we were not teaching our students about communicable diseases. So that we have to add. We are adding on. And now virology has come to the center stage of education. So, but we don't have any virology MD course. We don't have any virology degree course. So we need virology degree courses. We need research on virology. And another very important area is that we all think that we human beings, great people, and we will have disease and we will fight. And we are not bothered about everything around. We are not. If an animal has got a disease, you will get it. If a bat or some other animal get a disease, whether even if in Wuhan, in a market, in Kerala is a threat. And we have learned that the bats have some 50, 60 viruses in them. And this corona is one of the mildest forms. The shocking thing is that there are very severe viruses which can eradicate the entire human race available with bats. It is there. We don't know. We have not studied how we can contain. So it is all over the world, research on bats-related viruses are going on. Kerala University of Health Sciences seriously contemplates doing a research. We are having collaboration with the veterinary university and the virology centers, international centers, and we are planning to do that. So the concept is one health. My health is related to animal health, related to environmental health. If you destroy the forest, if you create problem for a bat, then a human being somewhere in Washington or Thrissur can die. So that is the situation. So one health has to be taught to the students, it has to be understood, and that is the business of the university. So university is planning to have new courses. And as Dr. Faisal Ghafoor has rightly pointed out, there is a huge demand for health personnel. And also the health personnel from Kerala is now a brand. So there is a great demand. So this is the right time. So we will have to increase more courses, medical courses, paramedical courses, nursing courses. But the point is, it should be a quality course. It should be a good course. So that is the most important. So COVID has created changes, and that changes we will have to take in a positive way. And by the time we create all these things, the COVID will disappear. As Dr. Hari has said, the vaccine will come, we will get herd immunity, and all of us will be back to normal and waiting for the another virus to come. By that time, we must be prepared to another virus, which may be stronger, virulent, and more harmful than corona, but we must be prepared. That's what I want to say. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And next, we are moving to Dr. Faisal Ghafoor. It is a very relevant question. Very practically, we are facing this question. That is, nowadays, we are fully or partially widely entered into the very process of online learning. How much it is practical in countries like India, where rural populations and remote villages are still in crucial reality? Will online classes become a regular aspect in the new normal after lockdown? How digital divide affect medical education in India? How it can be overcome? How far can online teaching be substituted for real classroom teaching? Dr. Faisal sir, can you explain the reason and real we are facing the online regarding the online class? Regarding the online class, sir, how far can
I'll answer.
substitute for real classroom?
Yeah, online, I do not accept online teaching at all, because this is a clinical setup. Probably if you want to teach history, literature, you can teach online. But as far as medicine or its other faculties or other specialties are concerned, online is not possible. Online, of course, some theory classes can be taken online. But as Osler said, teaching people without clinical medicine is like charting an unscheduled ocean or sea, something like that. That is the old Osler saying. The other one is like not going to see at all. If you don't see patients, you are not going to see at all. The other one is that if you go online and learn, it's like charting an unscheduled voyage. So that makes the matter clear. So the point is that this is only a temporary phenomena, one. Number two, as you said, already with the advent of these entrance exams, there is a class divide. Class divide is in the sense that only the people who are rich are able to write multiple entrance examinations, the poor are being left behind. That is what the Tamil Nadu government has given a statement in the Supreme Court. See, in addition to that, if you make this online, also the same problem is going to occur. Of course, we are trying to overcome it by giving TVs, we are giving data free, etc., etc. But all those things are temporary measures. Above all, it is the body language, the facial expression, the attention and concentration of the teacher, which evokes attention or attention and concentration in the student. See, for example, now we are speaking about viruses. My first impression, last impression about viruses is that giant of microbiology in Kerala, Dr. Jayaram Panikar, directly teaching me about antigenic shift and antigenic drift in viruses. That is what I remember. His expressions, his mood, his prosody of language. So if there is no teacher to teach you, it is useless. So there is no online teaching. Online teaching is okay for the COVID situation. Online teaching is acceptable. Otherwise, we cannot have online teaching as far as medicine is concerned. Second thing is, as you said, now there is a problem of attention span also. Now, if somebody comes and sits in front of me, that person cannot just look around and cannot fool around. But now sitting here, I may be having a cup of coffee also in between while somebody else is speaking. So I don't know how much of the attention and concentration span of the students is very much down in the internet era, especially after the advent of the mobile phone, where that unwanted data is being sent into the brain, which I call as a cyber attack of the brain. At that time, if you go for pure online, everything I'm speaking about is pure online. So pure online teaching, attention deficit is there. Similarly, I have to pass some comments also. The participants are raising questions. They are not raising any question about the scientific discussion going on. They are only asking, when will be my pharmacy exam? When will be my D-Pharm examination? This is the trouble. We have not come to answer that question. Do you think that the Vice Chancellor has come to answer this question of years? No. Mr. Nasif and Maulana people have taken so much pains to get the Vice Chancellor of Kerala University to tell us what curriculum and syllabus changes are going to be there. And instead of that, when is my examination? This my is one of the biggest problems which our students are facing.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Now, let's move into the Harikumar Nair, that is regarding the stipend and scholarship from various universities for the research, from the research agencies. But unfortunately, almost such sources are seem to vanish. What is your take in this state? And contrarily, there is one emerging tendency which is quite interesting also due to the repeating respiratory epidemic one after another, like SARS, Middle East respiratory syndrome, and finally COVID. There is a common notion among experts that medical and biological related science will dominate the whole domain of scientific studies and research program. Is it true, sir? Can you please?
Yeah, the first question is, this is only an apprehension, a concern over many researchers and scholars. But this is only a temporary phenomenon which will vanish soon. This is something like share market being down simply because of COVID. And slowly it has to come up, and it may reach the values just below the pre-COVID era, or subsequently it may move forward. This happens in history. Every pandemic or epidemic will shift this type of opportunities for a temporary down, and slowly it will pick up, and finally we reach a point at which everything will come to normal. That is my expectation, and this is only a temporary phenomenon, and this we have to be more optimistic than being pessimistic. And the second one is the experts have a common notion that the medical and biology related science will dominate. but I don't think it will dominate, but it may have a little bit of increase. But when you take the whole world scenario, the improvement in science is not really in medical and biology, but improvement in science is in other fields. I may repeat, the improvement or the explosion of science or knowledge has occurred in other fields than medical and biology, if you take the rate. And it's simply because what we have in medical and biology, many of our the so-called improvements are simply because of research in other fields, maybe in physics, maybe in chemistry, maybe in pharmacy, pharmacology, or basic sciences are really helping medical and biology rather than medical and biology itself. So I think this domination can be an apparent feeling. So for example, in radiology, radiology has taken a leap forward in the recent years. But I think that radiology simply did that only because of the support of the biotechnologists, physicists, and others, and not because of the radiologist itself. I am a radiologist. So, so I think this is only an apparent feeling that we will dominate. But it is true that our prospects, opportunities will increase as a profession. That is true. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. As we are moving to the last session of our online career summit, the next question is our Honorable Vice Chancellor. Sir, of course, our university and higher education institutions have been producing a large number of medical graduates like doctors, pharmacists, nurses, and other paramedical professionals since the independence of India. And most of them are keep rendering their outstanding service in research, healthcare in India and abroad. But nowadays, unfortunately, many criticism and concerns are being raised from different corners about the quality and efficiency of the medical professionals. As a successful icon in the same field, who is having both academic and administrative experience for more than 2 decades, do you find any reality or genuineness behind these allegations and criticism after emerging large quantity of institutions in the country? Sir, please.
Thank you. Thank you for raising that very important issue. We'll come to Kerala. Kerala had a few government medical colleges, few government nursing colleges, and few other institutions. And the route to reach that college is 100% merit. If you have a good merit, then you study in that institution at a subsidized fees, and they were extremely good. And that was the largest exporting commodity Kerala had. And they went all around. In fact, if you go to US, UK, most of the eminent doctors or eminent nurses, they're all from Kerala. And they were from that background. But then the number of doctors, number of nurses produced were very few. So at that time, the government took a bold decision to open up and give to private players. Many of the players did not have any experience in running this institution. And to run this institution, they need money. So government again opened up and said, you can collect any amount of money. So the highest bidder got into the institution. And the highest bidder need not be really interested in that education. He need not be tuned for that education. He is not a good candidate for that education. So you have a highest bidder entering the college, and now the college has got a duty to get him somehow a pass. So manipulations happen. So as a result, there was a time when the quality deteriorated. I agree. But then, meanwhile, Kerala University of Health Sciences came. It is just 10-year-old. And the university set certain definite practices. Similarly, national governments also realized this is not correct. So the Medical Council of India introduced NEET examination. So only qualified person can enter a medical college. And now government of Kerala has fixed the fees. So highest bidder will not enter, but the highest mark scoring person will enter. And also, university tightened this thing. University inspected the college every year. If you don't have facility, if you don't have faculty, the college affiliation is withdrawn. We have withdrawn affiliation of so many colleges. They manipulated with the National Medical Council or the Ayurveda Council and got permission, but still university refused. Because university has got a power to refuse permission even if government of India gives permission. So we use that weapon. So within 10 years, we tightened everything. In fact, I will tell you one experience. When the university started the examination directly, university examination, as you are all aware, the question paper is sent online. So the university, the controller and the student, all of them will see the question simultaneously. So, and that is 10 minutes before the examination. So when such an examination conducted, many of the nursing colleges which were getting 100% pass got 1% pass, 2% pass. So, and it became a big shock, big havoc. But then we said this is the thing, and we explained the politicians, we explained the court, everybody agreed with us. But then subsequently what happened, these colleges started teaching properly. And now they are also having 80-90% results. Now all our colleges are having good results. So when you tell them that there is an easy way to get a pass, they will do that. But then if you tell them that this is the way you have to pass, this is the way you have to teach, this is the way you have to conduct the course, now they are doing that. Now I can very confidently say that the students passing out from Kerala University of Health Sciences are good students. And we have a brand, Kerala Health University brand. In fact, if you go anywhere in the world, and if you say that this is a certificate from Kerala University of Health Sciences, they will definitely get a job, and that brand creation has to be done. Of course, this brand creation involved efforts of so many people, not only from the universities, not only by the Vice Chancellor or Registrar, but the colleges. Affiliated colleges were very sincere, and they also realized. Now we told them that if your college has got a good brand name, you get good students. When you get good students, you get still create better results. And now we have created another suggestion. If you want to have more courses, your previous course results should be good. If the results of your previous course, the course you are running is not good, we will not allow you any further courses. So if the college want to expand, you have a good result. So that is an incentive for the college. And also the incentive is that they get good students. And when they get good students, the brand name, now another point we have to be very, very, very guarded and careful is that Government of India has opened up or in the process of opening up the higher education to the world. 200 top universities in the world are being permitted to come to India and start their courses. So that is in the new health education policy. New education policy, if you see, 200 top universities in the world are going to come. And then when the 200 top universities come to India, our students should not be second-class students. Good students may go to that university and we get a second-class student. That should not happen. Then how do you prevent that? You create quality. And in fact, university has created another quality circle and a quality competition. And the institutions which are having a quality, we are going to give them certain credits. So quality is the watchword, catchword, and with that, we can create a good brand name. So that brand name and new courses, Kerala definitely will shine. We will shine. Whether COVID comes or COVID disappear, our quality can be maintained. Even if other pandemics come, we don't care if we have quality people from this university. So don't worry about the quality. Now quality from Kerala is good, very good, excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, and thank you for your expression, your trust on us. And we are very much proud with your vibrant leaderships to guide our university into the well-known university in the world. As you said, if a certificate from our university that is really valuable for any job, anything that we all know as a university, the value of our university. And thank you very much, sir. And the next question is our Dr. Fasal Ghafoor, and it is a reality question. And due to the COVID pandemic, the financial situation, we know that. So, Dr. Fasal Ghafoor, in the COVID-19 pandemic and lockdown has badly affected the economic status of the governments and individuals. The people from weaker section of the society are desperately struggling for existence and survival. Do you think the vital majority of our society will be able to afford the increasing expense of higher education? And does the government have any role to support the backward people in this regard? Dr. Fasal Ghafoor?
See, in a way, we are lucky because as Professor Mohan, with whom I was member, I am a member in the Health University and the Medical Council of India. Initially, when as if you may be knowing that 50-50 formula meant that very high fees, 11 lakhs, 12 lakhs for medicine was there. And over here, it was only 1 lakh or 50,000. So that means there is a cross subsidy. So you need not give cross subsidy for medicine because it's already 50 years old. So then the need came and candidates are selected only on merit. And there is no increase of fees this year in any disciple. According to what the government has said, there is no increase in fees. One. Second thing, definitely already the SC/ST candidates are being given fees by the government, even in the private medical colleges. So now what the government has to think is that if there are, I forgot to tell you, there is another scheme also that candidates below BPL, they are getting almost free education in the private medical colleges. That has to be fine-tuned, but it has been going on. It is still there. So the government is definitely, the government has been, not only this government, all the governments, previous government also, they have been trying to subsidize the medical education. So now you have at least 10 to 15% of the students who are really poor, they are getting very subsidized selection. Now whether any sort of see, this cannot be given to everybody. You cannot say COVID is there, so you reduce the fees. No. That is not correct. That reduction can be given only to the poorest of poor. The others cannot claim that my business, see for example, Yusuf Ali comes and says, my Lulu group is now becoming a failure and I am losing course and course, so let my children study free. That doesn't go. So the matter is very straightforward. The government can think of subsidizing some sort of this thing, but the government is also in a very dire straits. No, government is also very poor. So it may not be possible. The only government which is rich over here is the central government, because the central government has now, I don't want to enter into the politics of that, but anyhow, the central government has not opened its purses. So the central government should come out with some scheme for the poor students, and where the subsidy can be given to the poor students. Otherwise, it is not possible. I'll tell you, because the Rajendra Babu Commission for fixing fees, they are fixing the fees for everything, taking only the bare minimum into account. And the managements are going on saying that the fees should be increased. So that is not going to occur. The fees is not going to be increased. Neither is the fees going to be decreased. So that is what I feel is going to occur now. Only when the economic the maximum we can do is that some other sort of bank loans and other things may be given by the government at a very nominal interest for the poor students. The bank loan, because as you know, the repo rate, what is the bank taking rate from the Reserve Bank has come down significantly. So the students can be subsidized by giving for at 4% or something like that for studying for medical and other courses.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And we are moving to our last question to the Dr. G.S. Harikumaran Nair. That is, thanks to the paradigm shift which is already happened in medical education, like all remaining sectors, the youngsters who are aspiring for more achievements and position in research and academics are really going through really unpredictable situations about further steps and future plan. In this very crucial content, I do definitely expect a comprehensive counseling and proper guidance from you to the fresh graduates and young professionals. Also, I request you to shed the light on emerging new trends and upcoming opportunities in medical and paramedical education.
I think this has been answered in a different way in the previous question. where our opportunities will be increasing, and this is only a temporal phenomenon that there is a setback for researchers and students at present, and in the coming era, post-COVID era, definitely the medical profession will flourish as a profession, because lot of demands are there, demand for doctors, demand for nurses, demand for paramedical personnel, and demand for pharmacy, and every field of medicine and paramedical and allied health sciences as an increased demand in post-COVID. Uh, I don't have to say that this will get more chance and that will get less chance, but generally we think that every medical and allied and paramedical profession will get additional increase in demand for jobs, and also for research in near future. And uh, but uh, but we have to wait a little bit to get the time coming, and definitely at this point of time, this is for the demand is for a short-term demand, but generally there will be a long-term demand in future also, because of the emerging demands in different fields as a specialist, and also as paramedical personnel. And I have to put another word is that there will be more increase in paramedical side and the allied health sciences than in the medical side, and of course for nursing side also. And we have to expect such a shift of demand for paramedical and nursing professionals in near future. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Hello.
Thank you very much. Now we have Dr. Ragesh Kumar sir. Dr. Ragesh Kumar sir.
One minute.
Okay, sir. Tell me.
One more question is there for Dr. Mohan. Question number 3 for Dr. Mohan.
It's okay, sir.
It's okay. It's answered. Right.
Yeah, answer. Now we have the Savida University Vice Chancellor, Dr. Ragesh Sharma with us. I am calling upon for the final remarks. I think he is audible with us. Dr. Ragesh, can you hear me?
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah. See, very useful discussion, and I think our first call will be that we should all, as Vice Chancellor, should invite our academic council meeting and seek the issues which our principals of various colleges would like to raise, especially say there is a concern about examination system. Bar Council of India says you dispense of. PCI has given some directions about semester system evolution for some time and also going for annual examination. So we have to do some harmonization immediately, and for that we have to take into confidence our academic councils, and depending on their board of studies recommendations, we have to design some new things for the new normals, as you said, in the post-COVID era or the COVID era, because COVID era is continuing. And all this is very important because students are having a lot of apprehensions in their mind about when they are going to get their degrees, especially those who are in the final years, and also whether they are going to get it. That is also one question. So I think we have to look at it very optimistically, and I totally agree that optimism has to be maintained at all levels, and we have to give directions to the university, to the students, to the parents, because we have got a very sturdy higher education system, especially in medical and allied sciences, and the call is that we have to further strengthen it, and keeping all the today's reality. I was very much like the comments like we should introduce MD virology course or some courses in allied health sciences, especially for care of infectious diseases, because we are concentrating mainly on non-communicable diseases, as was rightly pointed out. So this is all what I have to add. Thank you. Thank you for seeking my comments.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I think Mr. Rejidan with us, the Kerala State Self-Financing Pharmacy Association General Secretary, Mr. Rejidan. Can you hear me, sir? Ahilya Group of Institutions. Tell him, Ahilya, Rejidan, please unmute and talk. If you can audible my voice. Okay, sir. Now is the time for conclusion. First of all, I would like to thank all the Almighty for blessing us to conduct such a wonderful trial. Rejidan? Sorry. To conduct, I am thanking for the Almighty for blessing us to conduct such a wonderful career event in a successive manner. All credits go to our respected, knowledgeable resource person from medical education field. Also, I would like to acknowledge with the heartiest gratitude all of our participants, including academicians like vice chancellors, deans, principals, professors, teachers from their generosity to with us today. I am also extremely blessed with the presence of young scientists, medical professionals, entrepreneurs, managers from different parts of the world like UAE, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Qatar, Kuwait, Ethiopia, UK, Canada, etc. We got more knowledge and wisdom on various aspects of medical education in COVID era. The importance of medical education is increasing. The courage and willingness of young generation should also improve. The profession will remain relevant as long as the mankind survive. I sincerely thank all our honorable guests, Dr. Mohan Kundummel, Dr. Fasal Ghafoor, and Dr. G.S. Harikumaran Nair for sharing their valuable time with us. I also thank each one of you, the person behind this function. I would rather say it is the success of the teamwork of my Managing Director, N. Abdul Rashid, Administrator Mr. Sayyid Muhammad, my principals, faculty members, students, and technical staff, including Mr. Iqbal and Yunus. Last but not the least, on behalf of Maulana Institutions, I thank everyone striving hard for the success of this amazing event. Thank you all.